on that, as you've discussed in a few of your posts, you was talking about, was it Albania was the Italy you remember, kind of
Yeah,
the nature.
it
And
was. It was.
as we said, we thought, oh, okay, Italy's not going to let you back. They're going to take your Italian card from you. The nanas are coming for you, and there
Yeah,
was a
they
whole
will.
joke about all that. But I am curious to to hear why you think that is more old Italy, the one you remember and love, as opposed to now.
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I was living in Serbia, I met a lot of people who were just traveling through the Balkans, because I moved there in March 2021, and so the situation was still a bit unclear, and I met a lot of people who were a lot of Australians who were traveling through the Balkans, because essentially they couldn't go back to the country. They could go back, but it would be impossible for them to leave again. And so they all told me about Albania, and everybody kept saying how wonderful Albania is, it looks great, and so on and so forth. And so last summer, I went somewhere else. I went to Kiev, Ukraine. And then from there, I had a friend who told me, hey, why don't we go somewhere for a week? Okay, let's go. And it was either Croatia or Albania. But I'd already been to Croatia. I had never been to Albania. So I said, Albania. And there were a few things that I was curious to find out, because there's, unless I'm mistaken, there are about 100,000 Albanians living in Italy. It's a huge community. And there are many connections between Italy and Albania, mostly to do with the fact that geographically it's probably 50 miles, on the other side of the Mediterranean. And we had this huge migration pattern in the 80s and 90s. They would come now they're here, they would come here. And I was curious to find out if everything I had been told and everything I knew, especially because if you live in Italy, you have Albanian friends, because there are so many. So statistically, you will probably know some of them, and they go back, and of course they like their own country, they love it. So I was just curious, and I went there, and I did find pretty much what I was told I would find, because geographically, visually, it looks the same as southern Italy. So yeah, Italy, you have the mountains in the backdrop, and then you have the seaside, you have the beaches, you have the cafe culture. So you have this idea that what you do is just lounge by the beach all day, and then you go to the cafes, you go to the restaurant, and you sit down and you spend much longer than is necessary just sitting, doing nothing, just chilling.
Yeah,
And
I know
that's what
you
I
said
that's
it seemed like a much more slower paced, relaxed kind of culture atmosphere.
Yeah, and it's still a bit underdeveloped, as opposed to some places in Italy are overdeveloped, I would say. Others are underdeveloped in Italy. And in Albania, it's kind of like that, because you have a lot of Albanians, not just from Italy, that went back. Maybe they didn't go back permanently, but they came to Italy, they found a job, made some money, went back and started building their own house, because of course it was so much cheaper. Or they bought a land and they're working on a project, so they go back and forth. And so it's still being developed, but it's different. So it's a bit slow paced, and the the people are just a bit different. They're a bit more laid back. I think probably one of the biggest problems with Italy is bureaucracy. It's like a cancer, and it's everywhere. And you see it on a day-to-day basis, even doing mundane things that you think were not affected by it, but you still see it. Whereas in Albania, I didn't see that. I'm sure it's terrible. Most countries are terrible when it comes to bureaucracy, if you actually have to get something done. But when it comes to just, finding a place to stay and just enjoying your holiday, you just don't see it. I don't know how to explain it. And again, I'm kind of biased when it comes to Italy, because I'm not the biggest fan of Italy right now. And I
Obviously.
admit it. Yeah. So, and that's why I saw a lot of elements that reminded me of 20 years ago, when Italy was everything people think it is, but the bad sides that people don't see from the outside were not as pronounced as they are nowadays. Because if you come here and you spend more than 5 minutes, you'll see these things. Whereas if you, in the past, unless you actually wanted to move here, you wouldn't have seen it. You know, as a tourist, you wouldn't have seen it. Now you start to see it even as a tourist, and that's a bad thing, I think. Whereas in Albania, you could just, it's just a different feeling. It felt more laid back and more in tune with the idea that I have of my own country, what Italy should be in a way. And prices are so much lower. Everything is a lot less expensive than it is in Italy, so you can enjoy it more. So yeah, and I think this.
You said the food and drink prices were crazy cheap.
Yeah, there are a lot of Greek influences as well as Turkish influences as well.
I know a lot of the foods and stuff you were showing looked really good.
Yeah, it was pretty good. It's pretty good. It's this interesting mix of Mediterranean plus Turkish and, well, technically still in the Mediterranean, and Greek. Because it's like Albania is in the Balkans, but it borders with Greece. There's a strong Turkish influence. There's also a bit of an Italian influence, I would say, by proxy. Because I think during World War II, if I'm not mistaken, before World War II, Italy invaded Albania for like 5 minutes. It didn't. I don't think it worked very well, but we did. And then during the 80s and 90s, there's this rumor has it. It's like a legend. I think it's true, but it's like this myth that during the 80s and 90s, Albania was under dictatorship. Well, this is a fact, not a myth, but apparently they could only watch state-controlled television. Again, also a fact. But there's this rumor, this legend that they could sort of hijack our antennas, so they would watch Italian television, which was the only non-state controlled thing they could watch. And I think this is probably partially true. And legend has it that's how they started picking up Italian. And I think this is also, like most legends, you know, part of it is like fantasy, part of it is like fables, but part of it is probably true. There's definitely an element of truth. Right. And so it's this weird combination of different influences. I found that quite endearing. I would advise everybody to go to Albania for holiday, and I would advise everybody to go to Kiev also, and Belgrade.
Well, I know the way you described them, I was intrigued, and it was places, you know, I would have never thought about and would have never been on my radar to visit. But after watching your post, or well, seeing your posts and reading about these places, the prices, and the scenery you were showing, and how you described it as a much more laid back and friendly and kind of welcoming atmosphere, I thought, well, I'd go there, you know. And it was just, you know, and you did kind of, you know, like I said, a place I had never even remotely thought about. You started making me think, well, you know what, maybe that's not a bad place, you know, and it is kind of nice. I would also, you know, intrigued because you have traveled and you have found, you know, so many places that you do like. Is there any place you have been that would maybe lure you from living in Italy any longer and make a home someplace else?
Yeah, Serbia, definitely. Belgrade, Serbia. That's
Wow.
the place for me. Yeah. But no doubt, zero doubts about it. Yeah, it's a combination of things. It's just things that I saw and objective things as well as subjective things. So it's a combination of, first of all, everybody speaks English very well.
That's huge. That's huge.
And that's surprising, because we have to remember that Serbia has only been a country for about 15 years. And before that, it was another country. And before it was another country. And 30 years ago, it was a completely different country, which was called Yugoslavia. and they were culturally as far as you can, or at least they were trying to be as far as you can be from, you know, the American culture, which is why most people in the world speak English. I mean, that's one of the reasons, one of the great contributors, even in Scandinavia, for example. Sorry, I reference Scandinavia again, but they speak great English because they learn in school, but because everybody watches, you know, American made, or at the very least, if they're not made in America, which is beyond the point, they're in English. It's the English language. And so everybody speaks English in Serbia, and they speak it very well.
That would be a big bonus, yes.
Yes, infrastructure-wise, when it comes to things that you need as a digital nomad or somebody who moves there, so you need access to healthcare, and it's improving like mad, especially when it comes to dental healthcare. It's apparently famous for it. And when it comes to banking, comes to housing, when it comes to internet speed, when it comes to access, this is probably one of the cons, access to consumer goods, as in online commerce, which is very convenient, and you have access to everything, and everything is so cheap. And of course, the conversation is a bit polarizing for a variety of reasons, but for you as a consumer, there are a lot of advantages, and in Serbia, you don't have that. So that's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just something to keep in mind. You're not going to have delivery of something you order from Amazon the same day or the next day. That's right. Not going to happen. You have other things. You have equivalent things when it comes to food and a few different things. But if you want to order a watch, a part for your car, or whatever it is, you can't do that there, which is something that you have to bear in mind. And some people would say that's a good thing. I'm just saying you have to keep in mind. So, but when it comes to everything else you need, it's got it. And the vibe is great. That's probably the biggest thing for me, because it's just, there's an aura in the city that you just can tell. It's full of people that are wanting to create something fun or useful or entertaining. You know, there are a lot of, for example, there are a lot of social activities with the purpose of educating you for something useful. So, for example, language learning schools, but you also have language cafes where you just go and you hang out. You go to the table that says Spanish on it. And if you want to practice your Spanish, you go to the table where it says Portuguese, Arabic, Russian, whatever. You just practice it. And this is not like a one-off thing that they do every once in a while. They do it every week, for example.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So if you're into that, something useful. We don't do that here very often in Italy, for example. So that's an interesting thing to keep in mind. And I gave you this example because that was the first thing that came to mind, you know, like learning languages, but it applies to other things as well. If you're into music, if you're into electronic music, I don't know if I am, probably not, but if you're into electronic music, there are a lot of festivals. Clubbing scene is great. Again, if you're interested in those things. Beer, I am interested in that. Amazing breweries. So it's a very long list of things that work for me, and they were like packed all together in this package called Belgrade, and everything is there. And so I found everything I want. I found everything I was looking for, and a lot of things that I didn't know I was looking for, but when I found them, I was like, this is what I needed. If that makes sense.
Oh yeah, no, it does. I know one of the things that I really, appreciate too is when you was there, you said the great thing was you could basically walk everywhere. It was
it's a walkable city, I would say.
And that's very good. I mean, you take somebody who, even if you're just going to visit, well, here when you come to America, first thing you think of is I need to rent a car, to get anywhere. And to know you can maybe visit a place, and most of it is accessible by foot. Me and you are kind of that way. I'm not afraid to walk anywhere. Got a pair of good shoes, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, something else I forgot to mention when it comes to infrastructure and things you need, public transport. You don't need a car in Belgrade because there are buses. They work great. There's no metro, but buses work great. There's a tram system. And crucially, you have Uber and at least two competitors of Uber, one of which is called, I don't actually remember what it's called, but anyway, you have three similar services. So what you do with your phone, you want to go from A to B, just like Uber, and you have taxis, of course. So you don't need a car, which is another great plus, because you really don't need it. You wouldn't, same problems as anywhere else in the world, in the big city or in an urban environment. You don't know where to park it. You're always stuck in traffic, and you don't need it. So if you move there, you're good without a car.
That's one of the things I can appreciate. That's the other reason I like small towns, is usually you don't have all those concerns.
Yeah, exactly.
So, food wise, where I guess we should try to get back to Food Tribe eventually. But food wise, where's some of the best food you've had?
Yeah, food. It's all about meat. It's a very meat centric cuisine.
That's
they
good
like
for me.
meat. They like BBQ a lot. Like, it's a culture thing, they do it. It's part of the ritual, that you barbecue food outside and you have a drink or 2 or 12 while you're barbecuing the meat. It's all part of the ritual. It's very meat centric.
I don't mind that. I know some of the people I have talked to, that's just kind of how their cultures are. And I'm like, I have no problem with that. I was talking to Natalie from Food Tribe, and she said where, she's from in is it Cyprus? And she said there's a giant festival once a year, and she said everybody's out in the streets, and it's just a giant, meat festival. They're cooking lambs and all kinds of different meats, and they're barbecuing it, and it's a giant party. And she goes, you would love it. And I was like, that sounds exactly like what I need in my life,
Yeah.
So maybe that's part of that, like, Greek influence or something, where you said,
Yeah.
I could get into that. That's fine with me. And like I said, some of the scenery and stuff you was showing was very pretty, very beautiful, country. And, unfortunately, a lot of what we see, we're subject to because of, and usually you see the bad side of these places and not like the sides you were showing.
Yeah.
And it's sad. It's sad. On that, you've been a lot of places, and of course we know you as kind of our drink ambassador of all kinds. Your Moscow mules to your black beers.
I'm gonna have one very soon, actually.
I need one of them copper cups in my life. I love them things. But there again, is the scene any different as you travel around? I mean, as the pub or bar scene, or whatever they're called, is there any specific place as well that you enjoy more than another?
You mean in Belgrade or here?
Well, just anywhere. The people, because here everybody thinks, okay, you go to a bar or pub, you're going to deal with a bunch of drunks, and most of them are going to either want to fight or be angry, or there's stereotypes towards certain places. And, I think that's a certain, does any of these have a fitting stereotype, or more and more?
No, not really. It's very
really
different in many of those places, in these places in Europe, because the way that people drink and what they drink is different. So they get drunk because when you drink too much, you get drunk, but they do it differently. It's not, they don't drink to get drunk. They drink because they like what they're drinking, and if you have one too many, eventually you're going to be drunk. And that doesn't really apply to Serbia, among other places, because they don't get drunk. They just don't. Any Serb can drink you under the table any day. They're incredible. You can't keep up. It's just insane. They drink so much, and it just never gets them. It never affects them. So I don't know how they do it, but
there was one of the posts you had done where Was it one of the Serbian? Was it the tall Serbian lady?
Yeah.
You kept referencing,
Yes.
and you said that I
Mhm.
think it was her you was trying to kind of keep up with drinking wise. You thought this is
Yeah,
hopeless.
but you can't keep up. I mean, you can, but the difference is you're not gonna be fine, and next morning you're gonna have a terrible headache, and they're gonna be fine. So, you can't keep up. You will lose, and so nah, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. You have to figure out a way to. You can't keep up. So for every two drinks they have, you maybe one, maybe half. So by the
Wow,
end of the
that's
night, yeah, it's terrible. You can't keep. I mean, some people are sort of trained, and it depends where they're from, and it depends what they drink. But they do drink a lot. But they drink the good stuff. Maybe that's part of the reason why is that they drink good stuff. They only drink good beer. They could drink good rakia, which is a distilled liqueur, which is very strong, but it's also good quality. So it's not like bottle stuff that you get and you just pour in your drink to get drunk quicker at college parties. It's different.
yeah,
So
yeah. One of the other things I feel I should talk to you about um, is, as we said, the passion the Italians have for their food. That, as I said, the iron fist of protection to make sure that that,
yeah,
that food is maintained to a certain level of Italianness, I guess you could say.
yeah,
Um, is there any other countries that have that kind of passion for their food and protection of
yeah.
it?
Many
Or
of them, I
is it
guess.
really?
Yeah, I would say so. France definitely has it.
Well, I know, Italy seems to have the biggest reputation for it.
Yeah,
Um, Honestly, being from America, I guess we don't have anything that we're like that with. We don't have anything that we are, so protective of. It's, I claim that because we were built from so many cultures that, we don't have anything that's truly us. It's everything we eat, everything we take in is somehow a spinoff from another culture.
yeah,
And, so when we as Americans look at, well, I dare say some other countries even, look at the Italians and we think, wow, they're really aggressive on their protecting, carbonara has to be, this certain and this, don't change it. It's just impossible. Don't change it. Or as the
yeah.
running joke through Food Tribe, the nanas will come for you. Is there,
They will. They will. But I like
but
pineapple on pizza, so
that was going to
they.
be my next thing. The internet and Food Tribe. I don't think that'll ever die out. Is the whole pineapple on pizza controversy? I guess. But is there any other countries that are like that? Are they that passionate that you don't change their food? You don't their grandmamas are going to come for you if you change it.
I think maybe France. But yeah, maybe Spain. Can't think of that many countries that do it in the same way that Italy does it, where everything is a crime against food, unless the Italians sort of sanction it, unless they approve of it. Then and there are many things they disapprove of, like anything that vaguely is vaguely different to what the standard should be. They don't like it. They don't really tolerate it. It's quite stringent.
Do you know of any, I mean, I guess since you're the only Italian, do you know why? I mean, why they're so protective of it?
I guess it's part of tradition and part of the conviction that we have the best food scene in the world. Italians Italians certainly think that way. They don't see anybody. They see nobody else as competition, because everybody else, even when you think of other countries where with a great culinary tradition, if they look at those countries like with a bit of respect, but like, yeah, but they're not as good as we are. Like, yeah, I get it, but we're better.
Okay. And how do you see that? Have you been places where you think, hey, the food's actually better here, or have you had anything like that, or do you hold it Italy has the best food?
I think Italy has the best food. One of the few things I can really say about Italy, like in negative terms, is just food. The quality of the ingredients, of the raw ingredients, just so great. It's not even that people know how to cook. I mean, people know how to cook generally, but it's just the quality is there, and it's so rich because there's no such thing actually as Italian food because it's regional. And there are very few things that we share across the entire country. Mostly it's regional. So when you think of things that are traditionally Italian, like pesto, for example, is one of the most famous one of the examples I can use, is actually only really used. Everybody knows it. Everybody use it. You can go to the supermarket and you can buy it, but it's actually only traditionally in one region. And in the other, actually two regions. In the other 18, they know it. They occasionally use. They know what it is. They occasionally use it, but it's regional. And it's the same with everything else. So for the most part, when you think of things that you think are Italian, they're not actually Italian. They're part of a specific set of traditional dishes and traditional recipes that, of course, spread out across the country. And that's why,
I
because it's so rich, because that makes it, you have a million different ways of cooking different things or cooking the same thing. There's a type of fried pasta. It's just basically like fried. It's the same dough that you use for pasta, but it's fried. And it's very simple. You use it instead of bread with ham and cheese, for example. That's how people use it most of the time. And it has like 5 different names and 5 tweaks to the recipe within 20 miles from where I live. Like you go here and they call it a certain name and it has a certain shape. And then you go 5 miles and they're like, oh no, but it has a different name, it has a different shape. And it's kind of the same thing, but not really the same thing. And you apply that to everything and everywhere in Italy. So that's why it's so rich. And that's why I think that, yes, for all things considered, I think it might be the best, certainly the best in Europe.
Fair
That I
enough.
believe.
Fair enough. I know, interacting with the different Italians that were on Food Tribe, the I'll say almost fights between, especially Northern Italians and Southern Italians, is, they'll argue amongst themselves about food and what's proper,
Yeah,
what's right. And it's
yeah,
like, oh my gosh, you guys, really? You guys gonna have a pitch battle in the middle of the street
yeah.
over a
Because they're
pasta,
very different.
because,
They're
yeah.
very different. There are significant differences between food in Northern Italy and even where you are, but Northern Italy and Southern Italy, almost like two different countries. When you look at what they eat and how they eat it, like even the way they dine is different. Like the attitude towards food is more laid back, and meals are longer and they take longer in the south, whereas in the north there's a bit. And also even the happy hour thing, completely different in the north and in the south. Like huge difference culturally. Like you go to some places in northern Italy with an idea of what your happy hour is going to look like, and then you go with the same exact idea in the south, and it's two completely different things. It's like going somewhere expecting to see a red car, and it's actually blue, and they tell you no, because to us that's what red looks like and it's blue. It's a dumb example, but it can
No,
explain
it makes perfect sense. Yeah.
how big the difference could be. So
Well, here it's, instead of north and south, it's our coastal area. So you're
yeah,
California, Oregon, Washington,
east and
well, the
west
New England
basically.
states. Yeah. And then the middle of the country. It's so different because if you're on the coast, east or west, it's one way. But once you come into the middle of the country, it's completely different. And the attitudes of people is completely different. To some degree, the foods are even different.
Yeah,
And, outlook on life is different. And, so I'm sure each country has that, kind of, protection
Yeah.
of their own. I think it's just maybe the Italians are just a little more flamboyant about it, or
Yeah, very
passionate
much
about
so.
it,
Very
and
much
it
so.
makes it more entertaining. Maybe, I guess. So on a food tribe thing, what is your favorite food? What's your favorite food?
I don't know if I can answer that question. I like everything
It's a
that's
hard one.
spicy. Like everything that's
Really?
spicy. Yeah, for sure.
That's something I don't often hear from people, mostly Italians, is spicy. It seems
I
to be
do
more.
like I like cheese a lot.
Hmm.
Because there are many different types of cheeses in Italy. But I would say I don't know what my favorite food is. I would say that my go-to is if it's got cheese in it, I'm okay with it. If it's
Okay.
spicy, great. I don't
Yeah,
like artichokes, and I don't
I
eat
don't.
olives. That's about it.
Hey, look, I got somebody else. There is not many of us that doesn't eat olives. I find them repulsive. I
Yeah,
just,
no, no, not my thing. I don't really. Not even cocktails. I don't like olives because it's wasted on me. I mean, don't use it. Just use it for somebody else who actually likes them because I'm not gonna eat them, and they don't
they
really add anything of value to the drink in my book. So
they look like an eyeball that's went wrong. It's just disturbing. I ate one on video for Natalie and John Coleman because it's like, if you just eat them, you'll get used to it. And I thought, I don't want to eat food that I have to just get used to.
used to, yeah,
And
it's kind of
and Natalie gave me these requirements. It has to be a Greek. It has to be this they're again very specific to be considered an olive to her, because everything else is just
there you
something
go.
else.
See,
And
regional
it's like,
differences.
come on. And then that's how I found out there is different kinds of olives. And my conclusion is I hate all of them. I don't like any of them. They stink, they smell bad, and they taste horrible.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I,
yeah,
I
I'm not a great fan.
so it is nice to meet another person who is repulsed by olives. So uh, yeah, that's not good. But yeah, asking people their favorite food has been an interesting question, because it is often the first thing I hear is that's a really tough one. Because people have the things they love, and it's not usually just one thing. So,
Yeah, true.
do you have a guilty pleasure food? How about that
Yeah, pineapple on pizza.
one? For more than one reason. That's fantastic.
Yeah, what can I say? I
Um,
like pineapple on pizza.
there you go. I know you really, and I don't mean it in an insulting way, you don't cook a lot. It seems
No,
like you do eat out a lot, but have you ever had a cooking injury?
I don't eat a lot in general. I don't cook. I'm not very good at cooking, and so I don't. It's not my thing. Part of it is because I'm convinced you can't be good at something you don't like, and
That is.
so I don't really like it. I don't like cooking.
Hmm.
I like making drinks for myself, but I don't like cooking, and I don't eat a lot in general.
Hmm.
I'm a foodie when it comes to drinking.
Okay.
No, I'm a drinky,
Now
not a
that makes
foodie.
Drinky. I like that.
Yeah, I'm
I think you
particular with
just.
my beers, with my cocktails and whatever. But when it comes to food, I just see it sometimes as sustenance. I need it, and I enjoy it. But I'm not one of those people that is super passionate about food itself. I'm passionate about good beer and food that goes with it. Maybe.
Yeah, good pairings. There you
Yeah,
go.
good pairings. Yeah.
I think you just coined a new phrase for Food Tribe, though. You're a drinky. I like
Yeah, I'm a
that.
drinky. I'm a drinky. You
About
can
to
either
put
be a
that to
foodie or a drinky.
I
Makes. I
like
mean,
that.
if a foodie is a foodie, then the equivalent is a drinky, right?
Yep, makes perfect sense to me. Plus, it's just kind of fun to say, and yeah, it
Yeah, it
kind of
sounds.
makes you smile.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a drinky. What? You're a what? Okay.
Yeah. It definitely, yeah, it's not bad. And that is mostly what we know you for on Food Tribe, is is your drinks, your cocktails, your beers. And there again, something, black beer, very much in common.
Yeah, actually, I'm later in a while. I'm gonna go because I found a new beer I like, and if I manage by the time the sun sets, I should be able to. I'm gonna go and grab a can or two of those beers, and I'm gonna take a picture and gonna share it because it's a great new beer that I found.
Hmm.
I found it. It's just a beer that's commonly available in supermarkets, and it's the same brand that I like for their India Pale Lager. And I saw the can. They call it like a black intense lager or something. It's basically a porter, more
Yeah.
maybe a stout, very strong stout. And I saw the can, and I was like, nah, I'm gonna have my regular IPL. I'm gonna have my regular IPL. And then after 12 trips to the supermarket, I was like, why don't I try it? And so I
Yeah.
bought it, and it was great. And so from now on, I'm gonna drink both. And so later, I was actually thinking about getting some, and I'll show it to you. You'll see.
That's cool. Look forward to it. One of the other things I got to ask is something that isn't understood here, I guess, as a rule, but in Europe is seems to be very strong. Is the love of Guinness? It seems like if you mention a black beer, it has to be Guinness, and if it's anything, and if you, heaven forbid, which me. If you don't like Guinness, you're about to be tarred and feathered for some kind of blasphemy. Um, where's that love of Guinness come from? Do you know what?
I
What
don't know. I
makes
guess
it?
they're very good at marketing. It's the only stout that has always been available in your local pub. You go to most pubs. Um, let's put it this way: you don't have to you don't have to visit that many pubs in your town, wherever you are in Europe, before you find a Guinness. And if you do find a stout, you're gonna find Guinness almost always. And so they're very good at marketing. They're everywhere. And so maybe you shun it for a couple of times, but then eventually maybe you're gonna have a friend that drinks it, or you just out of curiosity, you try it, and then you get hooked to it because it has a very strong taste the first time, I think. Because a lot of people say it sort of tastes like coffee, which
Hmm.
maybe is true. So it takes a little while getting used to, like olives, but it not like olives because after you drink 2 pints, you'll be on board. Well, most people are on board, and so that's why it's a bit of a cult. So if you say, "Oh, I don't like Guinness," people are like, you should like it," but it's
um,
not everywhere.
mm-mm. I have tried it, and I don't can't. And I've tried it, multiple times. And first of all, it tastes flat or too creamy or something.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like that. It's not sparkling at all.
Yeah, and I like, if I'm going to do it, I want that strong, as I've said many times, Russian Imperial stout.
Hmm.
I want something that's got some bite back. That, as over here the saying is, that gives you that bitter beer face, that something got some bite to it, and that's what I enjoy. And so
So
to
there
me,
you go. For a couple of months, you're gonna have to survive on a diet of Guinness and olives because you have to get used to both.
oh God, dude, my stomach churned as soon as you said that. I thought, oh,
Take some time getting used to.
no, no, I'll starve to death first. No. I'm shocked my face didn't go green to match my shirt at that point. It's like, oh no, I couldn't imagine that. Dude, that's rough to even think about. Um, and the other thing I'm curious to ask you, and a lot of people, especially off the food chopper, are always curious about, is now that you've been on Drive Tribe for what, 5, 6 years now, and you've been on Food Tribe for what, about 2 years now? Be correct.
2 3 years, yeah.
Okay. Um, what's the differences you notice between Drive Tribe and Food Tribe? people wise, just kind of community wise? Is there any big differences?
Not really.
Really?
Maybe with Food Tribe, you don't get that many users that feel very strongly about whatever it is they feel. But that's mostly because in the car world, you have now all these new things, with electrification and self-driving cars and so on. And a lot of people don't like those things out of principle. And so they really love to voice their discontent. And with food, that doesn't really happen because it's perceived more maybe as just a matter of taste. So if you eat or drink something that I think it's disgusting, I'm just gonna sort of mock you for it, but in a good way. Oh, like you eat that, you eat pineapple pizza, oh, you must be crazy. But that ends. With cars, it's different. With cars, it would be more like, oh, people who eat pineapple pizza should be jailed because the way to go is, I don't know, pepperoni pizza. But that's not that's how most people. Well, not most people, but that's how some people react when it comes to electric cars. That's changing, and we don't have that polarization in the food world when it comes to actually discussing it from a content creating perspective, as it were.
Yeah, I think the closest I could kind of go with that is, which what it kind of boils down to is people's politics, which
Yeah, sometimes it's that too.
unfortunately now dictates really how people see things.
Yeah.
And the closest probably in the food world is, of course, people worried about us carnivores because
Yeah, that's definitely it. Yeah, the meat
somehow
thing.
we're ruining the planet because we're not, eating another way.
Fortunately, I haven't seen a lot of it on Food Tribe.
No, and thank goodness. There are the people who do write the articles and stuff about it, and that's fantastic. Sure, whatever. But yeah, it's not as maybe the term's a bit over, but it's not as aggressive as it
Yeah,
is.
it's not as aggressive.
You take your people who, think everybody should drive a Polestar or a Tesla or one of those, as opposed to the person over there who is in their, Cummins diesel dually, coal rolling through Texas,
Yeah.
that could become a very fire and ice clash immediately. And unfortunately, politics and a lot of bureaucracy is just kind of flung back and forth at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I know when I go back and forth, I guess in that regard, we're very opposite. You are very much more of a drive triber by far. I'm very much a food triber. And for me, when I go over to drive tribe, of course, food tribe is very small compared to drive tribe. I do notice a slight nature difference of people. They're still mostly pretty good natured, and as a rule, not quite as cutthroat as say your Facebooks and your Instagrams and stuff. But
Yeah.
it does seem more aggressive, as a little more aggressive than what I'm used to. Tribe. And I've had a lot of people say that's why they kind of made the switch over to Food Tribe. Is it's a much more relaxed, laid back atmosphere kind of community compared to. I was curious to see how, what your general thoughts were, since you are mostly a drive driver by rule. So, interesting in that. So I know one of the biggest things is, since I don't have much of a presence on, Drive Tribe, is the number difference. It's amazing because, on Food Tribe, likes, comments, all that, is rather low compared to what happens on Drive Tribe. And you go over and you see somebody's got 200-300 likes on a post, and 900 comments, and you come over
Yeah, that's true.
and you see somebody's got 30s and 40s maybe, and
Yeah,
you're
it's
thinking,
true.
wow, it's such a different atmosphere. And did you find any complications moving from one to the other?
Nah, not really.
No, writing style, all that seemed to just kind of move over then.
Yeah, it was a natural transition.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wouldn't think you'd have to, but I was just curious for people who have come over that way. Did they have to make any adjustments? Some people say yes, some people say no. Some people
No,
have.
personally, I didn't have any trouble.
Fantastic. That's good. Well, we're definitely glad you're over there. I know I enjoy reading your articles, and
Thank you.
some of your storytelling is, you actually have, there's been a few, and I hate to keep referencing it, but the whole tall Serbian lady, and that whole story was just, dude, you had me
that was
laugh so
it was
hard.
fun. I remember. Yeah, I like it too. I'm a bit biased, but
dare I say, and we always laughed at, Alessandro is the Italian who isn't very Italian at being
yeah,
Italian.
yeah,
And just like, well, when I opened this podcast, the reference of, you've made it a couple times that, people's, not used to, you being the best dressed man in the room, and there is those little hints of Italian does come out in you occasionally.
Yeah, sometimes.
And but that's what makes your character so funny, and your stories and stuff is that that shines through, and you're not afraid to let that come out. And like I said, there's several of your posts that there might be something as a topic that I'm really not interested in, really, but then once you get to reading it, you have a very natural knack for dragging people into it. And I'll kind of scroll through and I'm like, man, this is a long article. Really? You could have broke this up into two. And, paragraph or two in, you're next thing you know, you're there just scrolling and reading, and you think, I've read the whole thing, and you often make, I've said before, you've made me laugh through them. And you do get, you do have a very good writing style. You make things, like I said, I never would have thought of Albania and Serbia as a place I would visit. But after a couple articles, I thought, this sounds like a beautiful place,
Yeah, next time we're going to talk about Ukraine.
Hey, I look forward to it. And dare I say, I look forward to, when this big dirt ball we live on opens up and we hopefully get some kind of semblance of freedom that we used to have. You being back to the old Alessandro and traveling, and like I said, each post back in the day, those who have followed him for a while,
I hope so.
Every post he was like, where is he at now? He might be America, he might be London, he might be back in Italy. You just, and that made him fun as a rule too, because you never knew, where he was going to fall and end up. So hopefully, eventually you get back to that. Get back to enjoying traveling and enjoying the places. As of right now, any big plans to move from Italy, or are you going to stay there?
No, I'm gonna go back to Belgrade after Christmas.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna be there for 6 months.
Yeah. Oh, 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to come back, isn't it?
Yeah, but I don't really plan to come back. So.
Oh, okay.
But,
so
one step at a time. For now, my priority is to get that intense dark lager or whatever it's called, and then it's gonna be 2 months before I go back. So
that'll seem like forever, I'm sure. Sure. So, all right. Well, I'll tell you what. If you want, there again, as I've said many, many times in podcasts, get to talking and it's 2 hours. I mean, we've been here roughly on, 2 hours talking.
Yeah.
People wanted me to try to make these like 10 minutes. And I'm like, it's impossible.
Well, you can make it in segments.
Yeah.
Like topics.
Well, yeah, and it would have to be, okay, you're only going to have so much time to explain this, or I'm just going to have to cut you off, move to the next one. And I find that kind of rude.
It's okay. We can learn. We can figure out a way to make it more user friendly in that sense. We'll figure it out.
In a way, I don't mind, because there is a large group who like the interaction. They get to hear more of, just like you, describing your travels and things like that. We really enjoy that, because they get more detail than, trying to get that condensed version. So they get to see a broader picture as opposed to a very narrow scope.
Yeah.
And to me, I like that. Sometimes the fluid interaction is better than a very being able to talk about topics in a relaxed atmosphere, as opposed to kind of a just get through it, So I probably should try to narrow them down, but it just seems to be this is what it is. So
we'll get better.
Yeah. Hey, I'm always open for advice. If anybody's got any advice, hints, tactics, I'm willing to listen. Yeah. I wing this. So, all right. Anything else you are on? We know you're on Drive Tribe. You're on Food Tribe. Anything else you got going on?
Oh, not really. Got a couple of websites, but I'm just trying to keep them alive while I figure out what to do with them. Because for now, I'm mostly putting all my time and effort into Drive Tribe and Food Tribe. So for now, I would say those are the two things that we should focus on, and then we'll see.
Okay, fair enough. As always, I'll put those links, your Drive Tribe, your Food Tribe.
Thank you.
If there is any other links you want, please send them to me.
Sure, I'll share them.
And when this video comes out, I'll put them in the description as well, for what it helps.
All right.
All right. Well, Food Tribe, thanks for tuning in for this another podcast. I hope that you guys have enjoyed getting to know our friend Alessandro a little bit better, learn a little bit more about him and his travels and outlooks on things. If you have, fantastic. Thanks. And until the next podcast, stay positive, stay wonderful, and I love y'all. Bye.
Take care.